was technically trained as a sustainable agriculture systems volunteer. So I specifically went up to the Caribbean coast of Panama to work with cacao farmers and help them improve their production, because they had been suffering from some fungus infection that was just depleting their product by like 50%, and which is the main livelihood for these farmers, for the Nobe Bugle people.
There were times when they'd bring in their babies. So we'd weigh pregnant moms and take their blood pressure and just talk to them about where they were in their pregnancy. And same with when they brought their kids in, we did like well baby checks. Most of what I did was education.
Well, because of my forestry background, I tended to want to go to rural areas where the forest was.
And the second year I became an English teacher also. I taught English as a second language and taught PE also.
I was a sort of an emergency science teacher. I taught Chemia and Physics.
Peace Corps. I waited also for my wife at the time, who graduated a little bit later, and the two of us were in the Peace Corps. She didn't have a job at first because they picked my career, but later on she got into a health group because she had a degree in health and PE.
Our primary purpose, however, was to try to persuade them to teach science in some other way than the rote memory method. So we had to create experiments. Usually I'd have a candle or a tin can and try to work from that to actually create an experiment demonstrating that scientific principle.
The host country basically says these are the kind of people that we want. And I really feel like maybe the State Department wasn't listening at the time, because the contract, the way Brazil thought, was for electrical engineers. Well, with a person with 1 year of, general college, certainly wasn't an electrical engineer, and none of us, there was only one person that was an electrical engineer.
So I couldn't really invite 5 or 6 other Peace Corps volunteers to come to my site and do a health fair. So what I decided to do was teach a group of kids in the high school, and they had a high school that was more like a junior high, teach them to be the teachers. And no one had ever thought of that before.
We had young girls who weren't particularly motivated. They perhaps, they came from all the different areas of the country, and whether it was very hot, so you had to have classes very early in the morning or later in the afternoon. We didn't have, books or materials that were suitable. The book was from British English, of course, which was a little hard for American to teach using British English, but also not at all related to life in Africa. So it was about Britain, So
5 donkey-powered water lifting devices as an improved means of irrigation, and also planted 15,000 trees in tree nurseries that were maintained by the same farmers that benefited from the project. And those trees were native tree species.
People that were logging, they had logging concessions there. That was a very important source of income, so we tried to make sure that they logged responsibly to the plan and that the money came back to the government. I also, while I was there, I realized that mapping wasn't very good. People went out in the field and they really didn't know where they were other than on a particular road. So I worked at getting some maps and putting some things together and developing maps for the region, which I think really helped.
So not only did they see something that they appreciated and take it on, to practice in their own fields, but they had the ability and the knowledge to be experts, and which not only is great for their community, but it's great for their self-esteem, and it just does so much good for somebody to be able to be a teacher. And
so I went back to my town as a surprise, And I found out that almost all of those kids in that group decided to go on and finish high school. And they got, because they had an opportunity.
They really did work with me and appreciate the information that I had to share with them. And a lot of them implemented the practices that I was there to share with them and have had very successful outcomes. So.